So we dedicate our session to His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada, who is the founder Acharya of ISKCON. I would like to pay my obeisances to His Holiness Gopal Krishna Goswami Maharaj and His Holiness Radhanath Swami Maharaj. We are on 13th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, titled as Nature, the Enjoyer and Consciousness, which is a part of Gyan Yoga, the third section of Bhagavad Gita. Out of the 6 subsections of this chapter, we have already done first 5, and today we are on the last section of this chapter, which is Gyan Chakshu, the vision of knowledge, in which we will see that a person who has the eyes of knowledge, how he sees the difference between matter, spirit, and the super soul. So only with the vision of knowledge, we can be able to differentiate between matter and spirit and go to our destination, transcendental destination, that is personality of Godhead. So this is a quick revision of the last section, in which the last two answers questions of the Arjuna were answered about Prakriti and Purusha. And we saw the difference that actually Prakriti is the material nature and Purusha, or the living entity, is the minute enjoyer. It is the Jiva, which is embodied between the body. And this Jiva is like superior nature of Krishna, and Prakriti is the inferior nature of Krishna. And we can say that the living entity tries to enjoy, but it is a finite enjoyer, whereas the super soul within, which is also called as Purusha, but he is the Param Purusha. And about this Param Purushottam, we will study in the 15th chapter. And he is the infinite enjoyer and actually the only enjoyer. We are only imitating him. So we are imitator enjoyers, or the minute enjoyers of this Prakriti. And some characteristics of the super soul were also discussed in this, that he's a supreme proprietor, he's the overseer, he's the permitter, like that. And then what is the result of this knowledge? If one understands this philosophy of material nature, the living entity, and what is the interaction of the modes of material nature, then he's sure to attain liberation. And like we have discussed various methods in Bhagavad Gita, some of them can perceive the super soul by meditation, that is Dhyan Yoga, others by cultivation of knowledge, that is Gyan Yoga, and others by working without fruitful desire, that is Nishkam Karma Yoga. So, and in the last shloka of this section, Krishna says, but the best is if person hears about Supreme Personality of Godhead, then he will develop the love for Godhead, and he will practice bhakti, and he will be able to transcend the path of birth and death. So this was a brief discussion of the last section. Now, today we begin with the 27th verse. In this, Krishna is saying to Arjuna, O chief of the Bharatas, know that whatever you see in existence, both the moving and the non-moving, is only a combination of the field of activities and the knower of the field. So in the purport, Prabhupada describes that there are very manifestations in this cosmic world. Like we can see trees, we can see mountains, hills. These are not moving. And there are other which are moving, like animals, birds, human beings. But we can see, like a person with vision of knowledge, eyes of knowledge, he can see that they are nothing but combination of material nature and superior nature. Without the touch of the superior nature, the living entity, nothing can grow. So, as we know, like in the 7th chapter, 6th verse, also a similar kind of description was there, that whatever you see is actually a combination of superior and inferior nature of Krishna. They are both the energies of Krishna, and anything you can see in this material world can be seen as a combination. For example, like we know, we ourselves has the soul inside us, and our body is made up of the 8 elements, 5 gross and 3 subtle. So we are a combination of the inferior Prakriti of Krishna and superior Prakriti of Krishna. Now, trees, why they have given the example of trees, Prabhupada? Because in trees also there is consciousness. And it is not so much developed as it is in human beings. But still, by our experience, we can feel that plants and trees, they also feel something. Like when we cut trees or if we play music, there will be different emotions and reactions of the trees and plants towards that, which proves that yes, trees and plants also have consciousness. The plants will grow very nicely with beautiful flowers and fruits if they are placed in a conducive environment. Like if sound music is placed, then there will be difference. And we also know that once the flowers and these fruits, they are like they fall from the tree, then they wither. Until they are on the tree, they will grow. So here it is read, because without the touch of superior nature, the living entity, nothing can grow. So even trees and plants, they are growing, they are producing flowers and fruits. So that is a proof that there is a touch of superior nature in trees and plants also. Now, we know that the various manifestation of this cosmic world, like mountains and hills, how they can be considered as combination. So in this regard, we have discussed before that super soul is entering each and every atom of this universe. So super soul is present there. So in that way, we can see that anything we see in this material world can be a combination of the superior energy of Krishna and the inferior energy of Krishna. And we also discussed the example of a laptop or a chair or a table, that they are come into existence from the matter only when a superior living entity is working on them. So they can be seen in that thing. So until and unless one tries to build a house from the bricks and stones and mud, etc., nothing can happen. That will remain as matter only, as bricks, etc. So in that way, we can see that everything is actually a combination of the field of activity and the knower of the field. So moving on to the next shloka. Now,
Mataji, one question.
Yes.
So the super soul is present everywhere, including atoms, right? So if it is there in the living entity, we can understand the super soul can guide the soul, right? But in case of non-living entities, how does it help? What is the purpose of super soul present there?
Actually, it is an expansion of the energy of Krishna. Like we explained, the sun is there, and sun through his energy is diffusing itself in the entire cosmic world. So like sun, like Krishna, as his plenary expansion in the form of super soul, he is pervading everything. So that is the pervasive aspect of Krishna, which we want to understand with the presence of super soul in each and every atom of the universe. Like how Krishna is pervading everywhere. So you want to
Yeah, I think so. What Rajesh Prabhu is asking, is there any functional role? What do they do, right?
Yes.
Like in a living entity, the super soul would observe the soul.
Yes.
So per se, I have not heard anything. This is a good question. In terms of role of super soul in a non-living entity, it's just what she just mentioned. It is pervasive feature of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, which is there
in his form of energy, like he's pervading everything. So that is all discussed as long as I've read in Bhagavad Gita. Nothing more has been discussed about this. But
and even like for example, anything, whether it is a non-living or living, they have their own constitution, right? Like salt or sand or stone, whatever they are, and probably that may be the thing that super soul is kind of giving them, that feature or that property, right? But we can check with other senior devotees and get back to this forum.
Okay.
Good question.
But Prabhu, Bhagavad Gita itself, book can be considered as example, right?
Yeah. See, Bhagavad Gita in itself, or for that matter, anything.
Yeah,
Srimad Bhagavatam, we
without
say.
without mercy, even people are not getting. So
That is a different thing, But what I think so, Rajesh Prabhu is asking, for example, I see that mountain is a different thing, because our scriptures kind of say that mountains are also living.
River also, no? Like
Ganga
Devi.
They are also living.
Mountains, Himalaya Dev and all these things.
But there are other things, where, it is said that he pervades everywhere. I think so. What Prabhuji is saying, what is their role there?
Why it is the need to super soul to pervade each and every atom? Like, that is the question. What is the requirement, or what is the need, or what is the function of that?
Right, Santosh Prabhu?
yeah, Prabhu, yeah.
Okay. So in the next, so further, like the true seer, he's seeing everything as a combination. Okay. Now, what is his vision of Paramatma? This is discussed in this verse. So one who sees the super soul accompanying the individual soul in all bodies, and who understand that neither the soul nor the super soul within the destructible body is ever destroyed, actually sees. So it is denoting towards the Paramatma aspect. So when a person comes to knowledge, when he reads Bhagavad Gita and gains knowledge after hearing from authorities, he comes to know that a super soul is always accompanying us. So Krishna is so merciful, we have discussed this before also, that he never leaves us alone. When we want to enjoy this material world, and we are placed in this material world in some particular body of particular species, super soul always accompanies us. Whether it is a body of a tiger or a mosquito or a human being, super soul is always present there. So this is when a person has knowledge, he can see the presence of soul as well as super soul in any living entity, as well as he can also perceive it in the living entities, like Paramatma aspect is the pervasive form of the Krishna, which is present even in the non-living manifestations of this material world. Now, we have learned that analogy of the two birds. The two birds are sitting side by side. One is the bird which is eating the fruits, and the other bird is observing the activities of that bird. So that is the Paramatma, and that is the super soul. And we, as far as we don't look towards the super soul within us, we don't get enlightenment. We are always facing our back towards the super soul, and that is the reason we are suffering in this material world. Once we look back to the super soul, which is accompanying us, which is guiding us to go back to Godhead, we will get liberated from this material body. And we know the characteristic of both. Both the soul and the super soul, they are not destroyed ever, means they are eternal. So a person who has knowledge can see the eternal nature of the soul and the super soul within the body. Unless one has the association of a real knower of spiritual subjects, that is the spiritual master or the advanced devotees, one cannot see these three things, that is the body, the soul, and the super soul. Those who do not have such associations are ignorant, because we know so many 99% of the people in this material world, they don't have any knowledge regarding soul, super soul, and the matter, what is there. They only are concerned with the sense gratification. They think that when the body ends, everything ends. They don't know life like after death, or they don't want to question about self-realization. They are not interested in these subject matters. And for them, they think that when the body is destroyed, everything is finished. So they want to enjoy as far as possible in this material world to the extent possible. After the destruction of the body, both the soul and the super soul exist, and they go on eternally in many various moving and non-moving forms. And we have discussed this also, that soul, if it doesn't get liberated, then it transmigrates from one body to another, depending on the desires and the karma of the living entity while being in this body. So we choose, we desire, and then accordingly we'll get the next body. And the super soul is so merciful. It is actually, it is the permitter, it is the superseer. So he is recording all our activities, is observing us, and whatever desires and activities we are doing, he is taking into account, and accordingly we will get a new body. Now, if somebody has such mature vision, he is in knowledge, transcendental knowledge about soul, super soul, then what is the result of that? Krishna says there will be no degradation of mind. Somebody would like to recite this verse?
I'll recite. Samam pashyan hi sarvatra samavasthitam ishwaram na hinasti atmanatmanam tato yati param gatim. One who sees the super soul equally present everywhere in every living being does not degrade himself by his mind. Thus he approaches the transcendental destinations. Bhagavad Gita 13.29.
Thank you, Ashita. So a person who sees the super soul equally present everywhere. So this might remind us of the 5.90 verse of Bhagavad Gita. Vidya Vinay Sampane Brahmani Gavi Hastini Sunicheva Shupakicha Pandita Sama Darshina. So who has a mature vision, who is a Pandita, he can see the presence of super soul in each and every living entity. And he sees the same super soul in everything. So he doesn't distinguish. He does not differentiate between the various living entities. For him, he will behave equally. So he has an equal vision. That is possible only when we are on advanced level. Now, when we are engaged in this material body, we will differentiate people based on their religion. Somebody is Muslim, somebody is Hindu, based on their country. He's an American, he's Japanese, he's an Indian. So we are differentiating based on bodily designation. He's a Shudra, he's a Brahmana. So actually this is happening all around. Why? Because we don't have that mature vision. We cannot see the presence of super soul, the same super soul in all the living entities. And that's why we always are degrading ourselves by the activities of this mind. So we remember in the shloka number, I think so 6.7 or something, it was said that we can elevate ourselves with the help of our mind, or we can degrade ourselves with the help of our mind. So mind is both a friend and an enemy. So what is this mind actually? We know that mind is it is very subtle form. It is a subtle energy and subtle element, okay, out of the three subtle elements which makes up the matter. Mind is like various, it is like Bhagavad Gita talks so much about control of mind, and it is sometimes called as the sixth sense also, after the five sense, sixth sense. So mind control has been talked about so much, and Arjuna also says it's very difficult to control the mind. But when we make friends with the mind, what does that mean? If we are engaging our mind at the lotus feet of Krishna, so by different devotional activities, then actually we are trying to divert the attention of the mind towards spirit. And when we are diverting the attention of mind towards spirit, then we will elevate ourselves. We will advance spiritually. But the same mind, if we listen to it and we engage in activities of sense gratification, it will degrade. And when mind degrades us, when we are not able to perceive through these eyes of knowledge, that same super soul is there, and the presence of soul, we cannot, like, without knowledge, we cannot understand that there is a soul. We are not this body. So that is the main message of Bhagavad Gita. We are soul. We are not this body. And what will happen with that? He will ultimately approach the transcendental destination. So in other words, we can also say that mind is the door to our consciousness. Through mind, we can elevate ourselves. Through this mind itself, we can degrade ourselves. Now, the true seer's vision of Prakriti and Jiva. There was the vision about super soul. Now, how will this person looks towards Prakriti and Jiva? So somebody will like to recite this verse?
I will try, Mataji. Prakrityaiva cha karmani kriyamanani sarvasah yah pashyati tatatmanam akartaram sapashyati. One who can see that all activities are performed by the body, which is created of material nature, and sees that the self does nothing, actually sees. Bhagavad Gita 13.30.
Thank you, Rajesh Prabhu. So this might remind you of that verse of 3rd chapter, 27th verse.
3.27.
3.27. Prakrite kriyamanani kuna karmani sarvasha ahankara vigun atma kartaham iti manyate. So out of this false identification, ahankara vimudatma, we think ourselves as the doer. And there we discuss this concept of doer in detail. We know that because we are identifying ourselves with this material body at present, therefore we are entangled and we think that we are the doer. And when we think we are the doer, we think we are the enjoyer and proprietor also. And we discuss this. So, and we discuss this with the help of this example, like axe is there, a woodcutter is there, and a tree is there. So all these three components are required for an action to be taken place like this. Jiva's role is he is desiring or he's making a choice. Then what will super soul do? It will verify. And then after verification, if we have the qualification, he will sanction. And then our desires will get fulfilled. But at the same time, super soul will allow Prakriti to act. So after receiving super soul's order, material nature through its three modes will try to fulfill the Jiva's desire. So if any action is being performed, a true seer can see that all these three factors are involved in an action. So these are the three doers which are responsible. The Jiva's role is like he's desiring. So somebody may say that I didn't do the action. This material nature is doing all the action. This body is doing all the action. The three modes of material are doing all the action. But yes, then why I am suffering? So the question is because you desired in that way. You had a choice. We have a choice to be greedy or not to be greedy. We have a choice to be lusty or not to be lusty. So whatever we choose, we desire, accordingly, we have to face the reactions because at present, we are identifying ourselves with this body. And last time I gave you the example of this person watching a movie. So a person is distantly watching a movie. He has nothing to do with that, anything going on in the movie. But when that hero is happy or sad, we also start crying and we become sad. Why? Because though we are aloof, sitting far off from that screen, movie screen, but whatever is going on in that screen, it is affecting us because we are identifying ourselves with that movie at that moment. So similarly, whole life, because we are identifying with this body and its relation, we are suffering and enjoying. And what is liberation? Because this is a conditioned soul. And which is a liberated soul? A liberated soul is also present in the same body. But the difference between liberated soul and the entangled soul is that the liberated soul now has learned that I am not this body. And therefore, the activities of this body will not affect him now. He will be transcendental to his bodily pleasures and pains. And that is that we can see in the life of advanced devotees, in pure devotees. They are not at all affected whatsoever is happening to their body. They always remain in a transcendental, elevated mood because they are liberated while situating within this body. So this is the difference between us, the conditioned souls, and the liberated souls. So when a sensible man ceases to see different identities due to different material bodies, like whether one is a dog or a elephant or a chandal or a human being, and he sees how beings are expanded everywhere, he attains to the Brahman conception. So such a person will have it will be situated on a Brahman platform, on a platform that he is a soul, he is different from this body, and everybody is a soul, and we should not distinguish based on their material bodies. When one can see that the various bodies of living entities arise due to the different desires of the individual and do not actually belong to the soul itself, one actually sees. This material differentiation is due to material conception of life. After the destruction of the material body, the spirit soul is one. So what do we mean by this? Like the nature of the spirit soul or the quality of the spirit soul remains the same. Okay. We may have a different swarupa or different relationship with the Supreme when we go back to Godhead. That is a different thing, because we are individual. We maintain our individuality. We say like we maintain our individuality. What that does mean that your swarupa and relationship with Krishna is different. But when we see to the quality of each and every soul, whether it is in any body, always remains the same. So that is the meaning of this, that the spirit soul is one. So when one can see this, he attains spiritual vision, that is Brahman vision. And thus being freed from differentiation like man, animal, big, low, etc., one becomes purified in his consciousness and is able to develop Krishna consciousness in his spiritual identity. So this is the advantage when one is able to assimilate this knowledge of soul, super soul, and matter. So he reaches to a Brahman platform. He has a Brahman vision. Now, in the 32nd verse, Krishna says, now those with the vision of eternity. So these we are discussing in the previous shlokas about the vision of a person who is in knowledge. So those person who are in knowledge, what they will see, they can see that the soul is imperishable, it is transcendental, it is eternal, and it is beyond the modes of material nature. That is, we know that because soul is a part of Krishna, soul is always Satchidananda. It has the same quality that of Krishna. It is eternal. It is not destroyed when the body is destroyed. So despite contact with the material body, O Arjuna, the soul neither does anything nor is entangled. Now, how to understand this? Neither does anything, we have seen about the concept of doer. All the three are involved. Soul is desiring and it is in contact with the material body, and because it is in material body at present, it seems to be that it is being affected by the actions of material body. But the same soul, when it is in a liberated person, then it doesn't take into account the bodily needs and demands, and the bodily whatever is happening to the body, the soul doesn't get disturbed. So soul by nature, the original soul, is pure in nature. It doesn't get contaminated. Only the problem is our false identification with this body. So that's why everything is there. Like we are suffering the miseries and happiness of this material world because of the false identification. Otherwise, we can know that soul always maintains its purity and it is eternity. And it is not entangled. Now we may say that we always keep saying that the soul is entangled, the soul is entangled. Yes, the soul is entangled of a conditioned jiva, as long as he is identifying with the body. But once he stops identifying with the body, once we are like a blind person seeing the movie, he will not have any effect of that movie on himself. So we have to become blind like that. If we become blind to our body, then our soul also gets liberated, and then we are in a liberated body. So living entity appears to be born because of the birth of the material body, but actually the living entity is eternal. Living entity doesn't take birth, only the birth happens of the body. He is not born, and in spite of his being situated in a material body, He is always transcendental and eternal. These are the qualities of the soul which we have discussed in the second chapter. Now, this is a seed verse of the next two verses, 33 and 34, in which Krishna explains that how soul always remains pure and it doesn't mixes with the body. It doesn't mixes with anything. So, in continuation of this verse, in 33 shloka, Krishna gives the example of sky, space. He says that the sky, due to its subtle nature, does not mix with anything. If we throw anything on the sky, dirt or something, it doesn't get contaminated. Similarly, the soul situated in Brahman vision, which is situated in Brahman vision, does not mix with the body, though it is situated in the body. So here directly Krishna is mentioning the soul which is situated in Brahman vision. It does not mix with the body, though it is situated in that body. So soul has actually nothing to do with the bodily activities. It is transcendental and eternal. The example of air also has been given before also. Like air can enter anything. Air can enter water, it can enter mud, it can enter stool. But wherever it is there, the air maintains its property and it doesn't mixes with that. We cannot say that air has contaminated because it has entered stool. No, it is the same. Still, it does not mix with anything. Similarly, the living entity, even though situated in varieties of bodies, is aloof from them due to its subtle nature. Therefore, it is impossible to see with the material eyes how the living entity is in contact with the body and how he is out of it after the destruction of the body. No one in science can ascertain this. So those people who have material vision, they cannot see this. Only the person who have a Brahman vision or a transcendental vision can see the function of soul and the body. And how, though it is in material body, it does not mixes with the body. It maintains its purity, transcendence, and eternity. And this shloka gives the example how soul is the source of consciousness in our body. We are consciousness even of a little prick on a finger, and how that is possible. Till the soul is present, we are conscious of each and every part of our body. And as soon as the soul leaves, we are dead matter. So that proves the presence of soul, and the consciousness is a symptom of the living entity. Until unless soul is present, nothing can be consciousness. So, O son of Bharata, as the sun alone illuminates all this universe, so does the living entity. One within the body illuminates the entire body by consciousness. So here, this thing has been explained with the help of sun. Sun is at one place, but by its energy, it is diffusing everywhere. And we all know that sun is required for plants to grow, flowers to blossom. And it is the energy of the sun which will remove contamination or infection from each and everything. It dries up so many things. So sun, through its energy, it's doing everything. So there are various theories regarding consciousness. Here in Bhagavad Gita, the example of sun and sunshine is given. As the sun is situated in one place, but it is illuminating the whole universe. So as a small particle of spirit soul, although situated in the heart of this body, is illuminating the whole body by consciousness. Thus, consciousness is the proof of the presence of soul, as sunshine or light is the proof of the presence of the sun. Therefore, consciousness now is not a product of combination of matter. It is the symptom of a living entity. The consciousness of the living entity, although qualitatively one with the supreme, consciousness is not supreme, because the consciousness of one particular body does not share that of the another body. This also we discussed, like we as a soul, we are conscious only of our body. We cannot be conscious of another body because we don't have a supreme consciousness. Supreme consciousness is only for the super soul, which is situated in all bodies as the friend of the individual soul is conscious of all the bodies. So super soul is having supreme consciousness, but we don't have that supreme consciousness. We are conscious only about our body. And after discussing the vision of a true seer, how a true seer can see the presence of super soul, how we can see that soul is always transcendental, eternal, and it has nothing to do with the body. Such a seer can actually transcend. So Krishna gives the sambonam of this chapter in the last verse of this chapter, that is the summary verse. So he says, those who see with the eyes of knowledge the difference between the body, the knower of the body, and can also understand the process of liberation from bondage in material nature, can attain to the supreme goal. So from this summary verse, we come to know that why this Gyan Yoga section is important. Why the knowledge of these elements and this matter and this material nature, the modes of material nature, what will it help us? It will actually help us in the process of liberation. If we come to know the difference, then only we will try to get out of it. When we come to know that we are not this body, we are soul, then we will try to revive our original relationship with Krishna. And then we will be able to achieve to the supreme goal. So if somebody has any.
Mataji, Hare Krishna. I have
Hare
one
Krishna.
small question.
Mm-hmm.
So I understand, the soul desires, and maybe I've got some understanding related to this. Maybe I would just like to reconfirm that. So the soul desires, and that is what the soul can do. However, just wanted to understand, does the soul's desire depend on the Prakriti, that is the three modes of the material nature, or it completely independent of that?
See, according to my understanding, the first thing the soul, because of its free will, he desired to enjoy separate from Krishna. Okay, he wanted to be the enjoyer. So with that desire, Krishna created this material world and he came into this material world. Now, Krishna created so many varieties of living entities, and everybody has its own nature and a swabha. A dog has a nature of barking, so it will bark, and it is according to the laws of nature. It is now bound, that soul is bound in that dog body. So that soul cannot desire to do what we can desire to do. Definitely it is limited. There is limitation due to the body it has acquired in. Okay. So our desires also are affected by the type of body we get, or they are dependent on the prakriti or this body. So they are different. And similarly, we know that in Bhagavatam we are studying when Krishna made this the creation, when we learn, then the Swabhava was also created by Brahma. So everybody's Swabhava and nature and all these was put into place. So definitely, like you are answering whether this desire is totally independent or it is dependent on the Prakriti. Yes, it will be dependent on the Prakriti, because in a body of dog, we cannot desire to have something which a human being can have. So if you want to say something about this.
See, I think so. The basic question here is, as long as the soul is identifying with the body, we are entangled, right? Entangled in a sense of, because of misidentification. Soul is pure, but we are misidentifying. How can we overcome the influence? Yes, the influence is there under the false identification, the false ego umbrella. Now, 14.26 says that how we can overcome the influence of the three modes. Mamcha yoga vicharena, bhakti yogena seved. So if we involve ourselves in bhakti yoga, now what happens? See, a devotee who is actually in a transcendental state, seemingly they are also influenced, right? Now, how do we understand that they are under mode or not? The thing is, we there are two things. One is a material platform and other is a transcendental platform. We can be under either of them, right? Either you are under material or transcendental. You are identifying with the body or you are not identifying with the body. The transcendentalist in a human body cannot fly, right? So how do we see that? They can desire to fly. So how do we see that? But they cannot fly because they are in this body. Are they not transcendentalists? The thing is their consciousness. Either you are in material consciousness or this. Your desire is aligned with the desire of Supreme Personality. Is what we call as a transcendentalist. That then the desire is not under the modes. The desire is a transcendental desire. The body is a vehicle which is being utilized for fulfilling the transcendental desire. Right? They are not identifying with it. They know that they are soul. So now the question is how the soul is always transcendental. And I think so we discussed that example in our Bhagavatam class, that for example, if a paper falls in a mud, can you use the paper again? No. If your food falls in the muddy water, can you use the food? No. If a gold and diamond ring falls in the mud water, can you use that? Yes. In that sense, the soul is never entangled. The soul is never entangled in a sense. Yes, soul is entangled as long as they are the soul is misidentified. But they are not entangled in a sense that they always have that liberty to disentangle themselves. Because they are transcendental, and if they choose to involve themselves in transcendental activity, they can transcend the modes. So that is our understanding.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Thank you, Mataji. Yep.
So the whole process is to change the nature of our desires from material to spiritual. So that is the thing. Anybody else have any question?
Mataji, one general question. So the soul is eternal and it always existing, right? Yeah, so we all Mahavishnu impregnated us into the material nature, and then we continue the journey. And once we do this devotional service properly, at some point of time, we will eventually reach to Golak Vrindavan, right? So as the time passes, is there a case where every living entity eventually reaches to God and the material nature is left with nobody? Is there a possibility like that? Maybe at time infinity. So everybody.
Perfect world, but no world. Rajesh Prabhu.
Yes, then there is no use of material nature.
Only
then.
spiritual world.
Correct.
Yeah.
We see in scriptures it is mentioned that there are eternally mukt souls and eternally baddha souls, right? And those eternally baddha souls, they are kind of happy with that misidentification eternally, and that kind of a rosy picture where there won't be any use of Mahavishnu breathing out and creating a pradhan is kind of not mentioned.
Dream-like state.
Yeah.
Dreamy.
Is not mentioned, because there are souls, like they are Jivan Mukta souls, they are Jivan Baddha souls, who are eternally kind of entangled. They can be purified, by association in long term. Eternally means for long time. nowhere mentioned in the
This is
scripture.
also, maybe we can ask to some senior devotees.
Yeah.
Is there a possibility of these being like, no material world? Maybe. Okay.
Any other question?
One last question, Prabhuji.
Mhm.
So, Mataji, you mentioned that the soul lies in the heart, right? So when we say the soul lies in the heart, is it the physical heart or it's some kind of?
No, it's not the physical heart.
It's the place. So during heart transplant, the soul does not go with it is not stuck with the heart. The
That's
soul
the,
is
that's
located in that place, in the region.
Okay.
It's called Shukshma Hridaya. It is like Shukshma Hridaya, which is like just the by location we are telling it. It's not the physical heart.
Okay.
Padmaji has a question.
Padmaji, you want to ask something?
Unmute yourself.
Pranam Mataji, Pranam Guruji.
Hare
Knowing absolute truth and knowing the Supreme Lord, they both are in a different plane. One line, can you explain me, Mataji?
Like, I don't understand your question. Knowing the absolute truth is Supreme Lord only. Supreme Personality of Godhead, Bhagwan aspect is absolute truth. And the absolute truth has three aspects as we have discussed: Brahman, Paramatma, and Bhagwan. So that is the definition of absolute truth, as we have done it in
Srimad
Bhagavatam.
Bhagavatam introduction says they both are in different planes. Knowing the absolute truth and knowing the Supreme Lord are not on the same plane. So I want
Supreme, see, absolute truth in a sense that absolute truth is absolute truth in a sense in its full feature, right? So in Srimad Bhagavatam again, it has been kind of distinguished that what is the thing. Absolute truth in its absolute feature, is, so yeah.
All the
and impersonal form.
Yes, all the three are there in absolute sense.
Okay. Anybody else have any question? Do we land this session? Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.